Welcome to Voice of the Nation. Today is 4th of July, and it is a very important day for Americans because it is the day that they celebrate their independence from Great Britain and gave birth to what is said to be the freest and finest nation on earth, the United States of America. So today, we are going to talk about 4th of July and how it is important to American history and life of American people today. Our guest today is from U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. Please welcome Nicole Fox, spokesperson of U.S. Embassy in Bangkok.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Okay, and thank you very much for coming to our program. Okay, and today is 4th of July. Can you tell us what 4th of July is all about and what Americans are celebrating on this day?
Thank you. So 4th of July is also known as Independence Day in the United States. And what it celebrates is the ratification of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th in 1776, which marked the independence of the United States from Britain and really is sort of known as the day that celebrates the birth of the United States.
Okay. You know, the first time I heard about 4th of July when I saw the movie Independence Day, like some 20 years ago, but I didn't really understand what it means. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened on that day? Like what led the American colonies to fight for the independence from Great Britain?
Sure. So it was the culmination of a series of events. It wasn't an impetuous decision by the colonists to separate from Great Britain. There was a lot of frustration at the time with taxation and some of the laws passed in Great Britain, and a general feeling that there wasn't representation of the colonists in the parliament in Britain. And so, again, it was a series of events that ultimately culminated in this Declaration of Independence, which indicated that the colonies wanted to formally separate from Great Britain.
Okay, and can you tell us how Americans celebrate 4th of July? What are some of the traditions that people do every year?
So it's a federal holiday in the US, which means most people are not working and they have the time to celebrate with their friends, their families, their neighbors, their communities. People celebrate in a variety of different ways, but some of the sort of consistent themes are people love to be outside. It's July, it's the summer in the US, the weather is warm. People barbecue outside, eat foods like hamburgers and hot dogs. A lot of towns have parades to celebrate the 4th of July. And a consistent event across the country is the use of fireworks. There are always big fireworks shows throughout towns and across states in the US. In Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, there is usually a very impressive fireworks show that takes place over the National Mall, which is this grassy park that stretches from the Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial.
Okay, and is that how you also celebrate the Independence Day back in state?
I do. My hometown or my home state is Hawaii. And so we are an island state. And so a big thing to do in Hawaii is actually to go to the beach because, again, it's a day off. Everyone's hot and wants to be in the ocean. But we really do celebrate with our friends and family. And fireworks shows are a really big deal in Hawaii as well.
Okay, and you say that barbecues and hot dogs are also very big deal for the celebration. Can you tell us why barbecue and hot dogs?
I think they're sort of easy and casual types of food to eat. And because, again, people want to be outdoors, they're in parks, they're at the beach, they're by the lake. It's something that you can cook outdoors and enjoy outside during the summer. One of the really fun things about 4th of July is there is a big hot dog eating contest in New York that's been televised nationally for a long period of time. And it's celebrated almost like a professional sports event, even though it's really competitive eating and a really fun time to watch people stuff their faces with hot dogs.
Okay, and you also eat hot dogs on the 4th of July. Yes.
Yeah.
And do they have like a costume or the things that people wear, especially on Independence Day?
I think on 4th of July, you tend to see everyone wearing red, white, and blue, which are the colors of our flag, colors of the Thai flag as well. And so people are really celebrating by wearing those sort of national colors when they're out and about during the day.
Okay, and at U.S. Embassy in Bangkok, do you have like a special occasion on 4th of July this year?
Yes, we have a reception that will be held on July 1st. We are very excited to be hosting this. After 2 years of COVID restrictions, we're so thrilled to be able to celebrate with our Thai friends and partners in person and to actually have an in-person event to mark this historic day.
Sound very exciting. And I think a lot of American in Thailand, they are also excited to celebrate 4th of July this year. And about the Declaration of Independence, can you tell us the greater meaning it holds than just announcing that America is a free country?
Certainly. The Declaration of Independence has played an important role in American history, not just, like you said, because it declared the independence and really commemorated the birth of the nation, but because it enshrines some very core values and rights that we continue to hearken back to. So the writers of the Declaration of Independence were really trying to galvanize support for the revolution and this sort of break from another power, another country. But they talk about things like unalienable rights, so equality, freedom, and they really write about government being a social contract with the people and being responsive to the needs of the people. And so I think throughout American history, you've seen groups hearken back to those values and point to the Declaration of Independence as enshrining those foundational beliefs. We saw it in the women's suffrage movement. We saw it in the abolitionist movement, in the civil rights movement, the LGBT rights movement. People constantly point back to the Declaration of Independence as a document that shows that people are equal and that we all have the same rights.
Okay, so even though that the things happened like 220 some years ago, and the society has evolved over time, but American values still see those values that declare in the Independence Day. And how does American political system reflect those values to ensure that those values are carried out?
That's a great question. So, as you said, it's a document that's fairly old. It was written in 1776, but it is still relevant today. And I think those values carry on today as well. It established the ideal of full human equality, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that these are values that Americans hold dear to our hearts and that we protect very deeply. And I think that's manifested in American politics still today.
Okay. And as an American, what do you think is what are the values that you think is represent American best?
I think the fact that we are open to differing opinions and that we welcome those differing opinions. You know, a democracy is something that evolves. Democracies are always works in progress because they are inherently reflecting the will of the people. And so I think what makes America unique as a country is that we are open to those differing opinions. We disagree as Americans vociferously about a whole range of issues that's consistent throughout our history, but we welcome those differing opinions and we find constructive ways to work together to hear the concerns of different groups of people and to try to work things out in a peaceful and legal manner, in a way that recognizes that we all feel very strongly about our beliefs and have to find a way to effectively coexist and improve the future of our country.
Okay, that's great to hear because not many people are open to a different opinion. But okay, but that's the thing that Americans are seeing very important. And can I ask you, what is your proudest moment as an American that you remember?
It's a very tough question to answer. I think there's a lot of moments that resonate really strongly with me, but I think a recent one is the election of Kamala Harris as our vice president. As a woman of color myself, I was very emotional when I saw her take the oath of office as the first African American and first Asian American to assume that role. I think it was not just significant to me because it didn't just mark sort of the breaking of the glass ceiling, but I think it's a inflection point in history and sort of opens the door for a lot of progressive change in the future as well. And I see her as being sort of the first to play that role, but certainly not the last. And again, really opening that door for whole generations of women and people of color.
Yeah, I think it's really proof that in America it doesn't really matter what your background is. It doesn't really matter where you came from, but if you are really working hard and want to be success, then you can be successful in America. And Still today, many people see America as a country of opportunity. And why do you think that people around the world immigrated to America to start a new life even today?
It's a great question. And if I can bring it back to 4th of July as well, one of the really nice additional traditions that we have on 4th of July is that our government actually hosts a whole range of naturalization ceremonies on 4th of July. So this is when immigrants to the US actually become American citizens. And we host these big naturalization ceremonies on 4th of July because of the significance of this date. And that reflects our welcoming of immigrants from around the world and our history as a country that has historically welcomed immigrants. So what I think attracts people to the US, I think initially people think about the economic opportunity, and I think that is real. There is still a sense that the United States values and promotes innovation and the opportunity for people to start their own businesses. A number of America's most successful companies like Google and Tesla were started by immigrants. But I think the attraction to the US goes beyond just economic opportunity. I think people see the US as a country that welcomes different opinions where people can flourish and pursue the things that matter most to them, whether it's politically, socially, or economically. And so I think that's really the pull factor attracting people to the US as a land that welcomes that diversity.
In Thailand, a lot of people say that United States is a country that made up by a lot of immigrants. So do you see that immigrants, they also play a very important part to US society and also contribute a lot to United States?
Absolutely. I think immigrants have been throughout history so important to the foundations of the United States and have really shaped the country we are today. And we would not be where we were without that history of welcoming immigrants. I mean, we see it from the Statue of Liberty, which is welcoming people coming to the US from diverse countries. And we continue that tradition. The country will not progress, will not grow, it will not move in a positive direction without this strong force of immigrants propelling that vision.
Okay, and given that America is a very big country, is the size of I don't know, about as big as a continent like Europe. Do you get to travel a lot to different states in America?
I have. I've been lucky enough to see a lot of our country. There's a few states that I haven't visited yet, but I think I've been to most American states. And it really is a remarkably diverse country, not just in terms of the types of people who live across the country, but in terms of geography, natural resources, cultural attractions. Various states are very different from one another.
Can I ask you that what is your favorite state to travel to in America? Let's say for a break or a holiday.
Okay. Well, I'm from Hawaii, which is a key tourist destination. But if I can't say my own home state, I would say, it's a very tough question. I think Alaska is a really unique state and very different from the rest of the continental United States and has incredible natural beauty and cultural diversity and a really remarkable indigenous history as well. So I'm always impressed whenever I get to travel to Alaska.
When talking about Alaska, some people may think that it belongs to Canada, but part of it is also belong to United States, right?
Yeah, it is part of the United States, even though it's not contiguous with the rest of the US.
Okay, and about the Declaration of Independence, which is an important thing for the 4th of July, where is it kept if like somebody want to see it?
It's in Washington, D.C. in the National Archives and preserved very carefully.
And actually it's open for tourists to see, right? I saw in the movie.
Yes.
Okay, and it has been 246 years since the Declaration of Independence, and United States has come a long way as a country. In your opinion, what challenges do you think lie ahead for Americans to prove United States is a great nation?
It's also a great question. As I mentioned before, I think democracies are always evolving and responding to the changing will of the people. We've seen how deeply Americans hold their beliefs and how people disagree vociferously about key issues. We've seen that manifested in the news recently. in some of the legislation coming out of the US or some of the Supreme Court decisions, Americans, represent a wide variety of political and social and religious viewpoints, and will continue to argue about our beliefs about the future of the country. But I think our history has shown that we have checks and balances. We have a strong legal system. We have a system of elected leaders that really takes their job seriously. And I think with those frameworks in place, we will see a country that will continue to allow people to voice those differing opinions and to figure out a way how to chart a future for our country where we are all feeling like our voices are heard and the rights we hold dear are protected.
Okay, and United States is always a popular destination for tourists from Thailand. Can I ask about the traveling to United States right now after the COVID restriction has been eased? Can Thai people travel to United States without quarantine right now?
Yes, absolutely. No quarantine. And actually, we just dropped a requirement to have to get a PCR test prior to traveling to the US. So you no longer have to take a test before departing for the US.
Okay, and is a lot of people applying for a visa after the COVID situation has been easing?
Yes, we're seeing a big increase in the number of people eager to travel abroad, to visit the US, to do all of that travel that's been restricted over the last 2 years.
And I think that a lot of American people also travel outside US as more countries open their borders. And I think that lots of Americans, they are also a big number of tourists who travel to Thailand recently.
Yes, we are seeing a lot of American tourists eager to return to Thailand. It's always been such a popular destination for American tourists. There's so much diversity here, whether you want mountains or beaches or cultural heritage to experience, or just the delicious food that you can get anywhere in Thailand. So Americans have been, since the country reopened, flocking back to Thailand. And I think we'll only see those numbers rise after July 1st when the Thai pass gets removed as a requirement. I think we'll see an increasing number of American tourists coming back to enjoy everything that Thailand has to offer. And we're really optimistic for Thailand and what that means for the country's economic future as the tourism industry recovers.
Okay, and 4th of July is also you say that it's a federal holiday in United States, and this year is on Monday, so it's a long weekend in America. So normally American people, they get to travel around United States during the 4th of July.
Yes, I think it's very common for people to travel over the long weekend. A lot of people will camp in one of our national parks or just travel to a different part of the country to take full advantage of that long weekend.
So normally for traveler to travel to United States on 4th of July, it's going to be a very busy weekend.
It is a very busy weekend.
Okay, well, thank you, Mrs. Fox, for talking with us today, and happy 4th of July to all Americans.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, thank you. That's all for Voice of the Nation today. Thank you for staying with us, and happy 4th of July.